Good morning, boys and girls. I am so excited to share with you today the story of Ruth. Ruth is a story from the Old Testament, so that's at the beginning of the Bible. And Ruth is a really important person in the story of God because Ruth points all the way to Jesus. She is part of the genealogy of Jesus. So our theme for today is to be humble and be faithful. And I want to teach you a memory verse because I think this is a really good one. Can you echo me? This comes from James 4, verse 10. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. A lot of times in the Bible, when we see people being humble, that means they don't brag about themselves or talk about how great they are. When we see them being humble, God finds a way to lift them up later. Ruth was humble in her life and faithful to God in a quiet way. She wasn't making a big show about it. And then later, she was rewarded because she got to be part of the story of Jesus, which is like the best story ever. So we're going to learn some motions to help us remember this verse. So we're going to go like this. For humble, we're going to look down like we're reflecting and not being flashy about what we've done. So we're going to go humble ourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. James 4:10. Can you try that with me? Let's do it. Humble yourself before the Lord, and he will lift you up. James 4:10. Awesome. Let's learn the story of Ruth. This is the story of Ruth. There was a famine in Israel, and the food was all gone. Elimelech took his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, Malon and Chilion, to live in the country of Moab. A famine is when there's not enough food for everyone. And is one country, and that's where Naomi and her family are from. But they move all the way to a new country because they're looking for food, right? That would be like if someone living in the United States of America, were to move all the way to Canada in order to find food. That's what this family did. The family lived there for 10 years, and both their sons married girls from Moab. It was a sad day for Naomi when her husband and both her sons got very sick and died. Naomi loved her sons' wives, Orpah and Ruth. Stay here with your own people and your gods, she said. You will find new husbands, but I must go back to my home country. So Naomi is saying, you know what? Because my husband and my sons have died, I'm going to go back home to Israel. So Orpah went back to her own people in Moab. But Ruth would not leave Naomi. I'm going wherever you go, she said. I will worship your God and be part of your family. Ruth left her own country and her family because she loved Naomi and she loved God. It was barley harvest. Sorry about that. When Ruth and Naomi got back to Bethlehem. You've heard about Bethlehem before. Can you think where you've heard about Bethlehem before? Do you remember how I said that Ruth was important to the story of Jesus? Bethlehem is where Jesus was born, right? So it all connects. Ruth worked in the fields belonging to Boaz, a man named Boaz, her dead husband's uncle. Boaz told his workers to drop plenty of stalks of barley for Ruth to pick up. So that would be like if right now my garden is trying to grow, right? And sometimes in the summer when my vegetables are growing in the garden, there's food that Ben and I can't eat because there's just too much. So that's kind of what's happening. Boaz is purposefully leaving behind extra food in the fields so that Ruth can pick it up and have enough to eat with Naomi. Ruth showed all the barley to Naomi. God has looked after us today, Naomi said. Boaz has been very kind to you. They thanked God for looking after them. Remember, our theme for today is to be humble and to be faithful. Ruth has been humble by going back to Israel with Naomi. She's also been faithful to God because she has left her home country and is still following God's guidelines for living. Naomi was praying for a husband for Ruth. She told Ruth to go to the barley shed and sleep at the end of Boaz's bed. Boaz woke up and was surprised to see her there. He wanted to marry Ruth, but an older uncle had first choice of buying her dead husband's land and marrying her. So Boaz went to the town gate to talk to him. I could buy my nephew's land, the other uncle said, but because I can't marry Ruth, you are next in line to carry on the family name. Here is my shoe to show we have agreed to this. So Boaz is a very honest person, and you could say that he is also humble to God. Boaz took the shoe and turned to the 10 men who had come to witness the agreement. I promise to marry Ruth, who comes from the country of Moab, he said. When Boaz and Ruth got married, their friends prayed that God would always be with them and give them children to carry on the family name. Soon, their baby boy was born, and they thanked God for answering their prayers. Now Naomi had a grandson to love in her old age. The baby boy's name was Obed. When he grew up, Obed would become the grandfather of King David. Jesus was born of this family tree. And that's how Ruth and Boaz and their whole story is connected to Jesus. One thing that I really like about the story of Ruth is that it has to do with how, even though Ruth was from a different country, she wasn't from Israel, that she was still able to follow God and be a part of Naomi's family. So this is a story that, or a song that is also about how God cares about the whole world, about everyone in the world. And I bet you know it, and so you can sing along with me. He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got the little bitty baby in his hands. He's got the little bitty baby in his hands. He's got the little bitty baby in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the wind and the rain in his hands. He's got the wind and the rain in his hands. He's got the wind and the rain in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got you and me, brother, in his hands. He's got you and me, sister, in his hands. He's got you and me, brother, in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. Hope you have a great week. Thanks for singing with me.